Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Waiting Since 57 podcast. This is episode 3. My name's Adam. Hello to all you Lions fans out there. And also a special hello and happy birthday to two of the most beautiful twins the Lord has ever willed into existence. I'm sorry that your present is Dan Quinn taking over play calling. But here's the deal, everybody. We're going to be diving in to a Week 10 win. It's the best feeling when the Lions are in first place. After the Packers and the Eagles had a snooze fest last night on Monday Night Football. Packers lose. Lions and the vaunted Bears are scrapping for first place. I love to see it. I am jealous of the Bears' schedule. We'll be getting into that kind of as we go through the season here. Tough game after tough game for our beloved Lions. But big things going on. But before we do, I just kind of want to break down for you how my process works when I'm putting things together for this podcast. I watch the game. I take notes during the game. And I've really been enjoying diving into the press conferences with Dan Campbell in particular, but I'll watch him for all the coaches that they put up on YouTube, everything like that. And then I have a YouTube package that also allows me to rewatch the game, but it's just everything cut out in between. It's just all the plays. So this past weekend, it was only 34 minutes long. It's a very, very cool perk of having that one little YouTube subscription. I can't always get the Lions games through it like I thought I was going to. You know, I live in Cincinnati, the city with no pity. So it's not always easy to get those Lions games to watch, but we do our best. And then I watch that expedited replay, and then I bake some takes, baby. You know what I mean? Fresh out of the oven. For you and all your loved ones. But listen, let's dig in a little bit to this Lions Commanders recap. You may be noticing a change in format here. I'm going to be streaming twice this week. I'm going to be streaming after the Lions games. Usually within a day or two after that, I can get more information, more data, and things like that I can help show you guys so you can better understand what's going on with the Lions. What's predictive, what isn't. I think that's one of the biggest things is as fans, sometimes just on the surface, it's easy to get caught up in wins and losses. And wins and losses are great. Obviously, wins are what you want to be getting. But when you start digging a little bit deeper into this stuff, which is what we're trying to do here on the podcast, you can have a better understanding of where your team is actually at. Are they overperforming? Are they getting lucky? Anyways, I do think we're talking about a situation like that with the Commanders, potentially last year, playing a little bit over their skis, breaking our hearts in the playoffs. This win over the Commanders does not take that sting away. It does not dry the tears of my 14-year-old son as we watched the Lions hit the skids in the playoffs. It does not cure my heartache from last season, but it does definitely feel pretty good. Producer Stu is unable to be with us today, but as always, he is here with us in spirit. So please be patient with me as I try to work through some of the audiovisual stuff that Stu usually takes care of. But let's dive in. We got my man Dan Campbell. News of the week. Dan Campbell is taking over play calling here in Detroit. This is the second time that he's done that. He did that in his first season when he was working with Anthony Lynn as offensive coordinator. I don't think this is the same situation as when he took over with Anthony Lynn. Obviously, the offense is far more talented. The team is far more talented. And the team is just built differently than they were when they were 0-6, I believe, when Campbell took play calling duties away from Anthony Lynn. One of the things that I love to see his reading glasses. It makes a man like me feel better about getting older. I may not be as ripped as Dan Campbell. I may not be as jacked as Dan Campbell. But we both need glasses. Makes me feel a little bit better about myself. But he took over play calling duties. And one of the interesting things was when you watch other teams, that's news all week long. That was not news all week long with the Lions. If you listen to the presser after the Lions lost last week to the Vikings, you can hear Dan saying that something's going to change. Something has to change. They have to go back together as a coaching staff. They need to go back and evaluate. They need to tweak. And he felt as if the offense was not a long way away. That proved to be correct. And I'll probably say this a couple of times. We have to look at this in perspective because this Commanders team, much like our Lions team last year, is now decimated by injuries. However, we're still playing an NFL team with NFL players, and you have to actually go ahead and do those things. Putting up 44 points is no joke. It's no joke. Just off the surface, kind of the eyeball test. Usually we dive into stats, and we will be diving into stats here. Pardon me. This team passed the eyeball test, man. The ball was coming out of Goff's hands quickly. The running game was popping. The ball was being spread all over the field. A lot of times we've seen the offense really flow in the passing game, specifically through Amon-Ra St. Brown. And there's nothing wrong with that because, as we talked about before on the show, the Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown connection is top tier in the NFL. But the running game, big plays, not just big plays, but they were getting chunk plays all over the place. They had long breakout runs, which we'll dip into. But I mean, it seemed like every time you were turning around, they were rushing for between 6 and 8 yards per carry. And that sort of thing really opens up the offense. It really opens up the playbook. So you can be throwing anything at the opposing defense. And as a consequence of that, keep them on their heels. We had chunk plays. We had explosives. And we're creating mismatches. You know, the number of times I saw Bobby Wagner, who I think is at least 35 years old. He plays well, don't get me wrong, but I don't think you want Bobby Wagner matched up on Amon-Ra St. Brown. When that did happen, that led to St. Brown's first and, well, his only touchdown of the game. But it's about creating mismatches. Seeing how your skill position players stack up against the defensive players and putting yourself in the best position to be successful. And that's what we saw all day long. It's what we saw all day long. And the numbers here don't lie. Let's talk some team numbers. Lions had 30 first downs. They had 546 total yards, 8 yards per play, 320 yards passing, 226 yards rushing on 33 attempts. That is 6.8 yards per carry. Yards per carry is not always the best metric, especially when you are breaking down an individual player. If you have a player get 15 carries and 5 of those were in short yardage situations, goal line, 3rd and 1, 4th and 2, that yards per rush is not always the best metric to show you how efficient somebody is being on the ground. But nonetheless, 6.8 yards per carry, that's not going to hurt anybody's feelings that roots for the Lions. In the red zone, they were 4 for 6, penalties. They had 3 penalties for, it says, for 1 yard. We had 2 penalties on some of these meltdown plays by the Commanders defense. Whether they were retribution plays, we'll get into your boy Payne, ironically named Payne, swinging on Amon-Ra St. Brown, punching him in the helmet punch, the ever-effective helmet punch. Time possession, Lions, 32.5 minutes to 27.5 minutes for the Commanders. They just thumped him. One of the things that I loved seeing from the rushing attack was our man Jahmyr Gibbs, and I have this graphic pulled up right here. Even when he's not able to be here with us, he is here with us in spirit. The indomitable, the irrefutable producer Stu hooked me up with this graphic. This is for 40-plus scrimmage touchdowns before turning 24 years old. And there are 5 people that have done it. Barry Sanders, Randy Moss, Emmitt Smith, Jim Brown, and Jahmyr Gibbs, ladies and gentlemen. 47, 43, 43, 42, and 41. And Gibbs is still not going to be 25 until next year, I believe. So our man can stack up some more TDs. He's scoring touchdowns at an unbelievable rate. When he first came into the league, you're always wondering how much of a running back share someone can handle. And the Lions have always enjoyed implementing this split backfield between Gibbs and Montgomery. And for a while, I was thinking, well, maybe they don't think Gibbs, maybe they think Gibbs is more of like that scat back, right? The guy that can catch passes. You're going to want to get him into space. And I do think they do that. I did not think he was going to be somebody that was going to be taking carries from the goal line, but he does. He has no problem with contact. He puts shoulders down. The man is not playing around. But Gibbs had a massive game. Let's pull up the appropriate stats here. Gibbs, 15 carries for 142 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. And he had 3 catches for 30 yards and a touchdown. The dude is balling. We had Montgomery also with 15 carries, 71 yards. And I heard some takes after the game that I really disagreed with. I heard some people saying that, oh, well, this is Dan getting back to having this split backfield the way he wants it. And you only draw that conclusion if you look at the box score. But ladies and gentlemen, we dig deeper. When the game mattered, before we started pulling guys late in the game, the touch carry between Gibbs and Montgomery was much different. It was not 15-15. It was 15-10. Okay, so 66% of the carries are going to Gibbs. That's obviously not a split backfield. Okay, so don't draw that conclusion just by looking at that box score that that's what was going on. Obviously, they ran all over the Commanders, the beat up Commanders. I'm trying to find my mouse here, folks. And then in the passing game, dude, they're throwing the ball all over the field. The ball was coming out quick, okay? It's one of the ways that you can handle pressure. If your offensive line is beat up, or even if they aren't, this is one of the ways to handle pressure, being able to get that ball out of your quarterback's hands quickly. And they did that. They were racking up first downs, spreading the ball all over the field. And everything they did on offense worked. One of the things that consistently impresses me about Dan Campbell, and I've been getting a deeper appreciation for that as I listen to more and more of these pressers that he does. He's not just, a rah-rah guy. Obviously, he has a mind for the offensive side of the ball. He knows what he wants to do, and he's predictive with it. There's a clip floating around on TikTok right now, and you should check it out. It shows when the Lions are running these crossing routes over and over again with Jahmyr Gibbs, which Jared Goff said after the game is essentially a cheat code. But the Commanders were not being able to stop it. And so they kept running it. And it's this compilation clip where it shows Dan Campbell apparently celebrating after calling the play. I don't know if it was on Jamo's first touchdown. I think it was on the touchdown where he flipped into the end zone. Maybe he only had one TD. I'll dig back into the box score here in a second. But it was the play which Jamo flipped into the end zone. They have a split screen where it shows Campbell calling the play and pumping his fist and being fired up like Dan Campbell does. And then the next play, they scored the TD. The guy understands how defenses are responding to the offense and how to stay one step ahead. In his presser yesterday, I believe, he was talking about when he took over play calling from Anthony Lynn, and our boy from the Bears took over, Ben Johnson, took over play calling, or took over offensive help there. He said, he really showed Ben how he wanted him to run the offense, because Dan has a vision for what he wants to be doing. Now, the question comes up is he going to be calling plays for the entire season? I don't know. We'll see. He did seem to leave the door open to potentially giving those play call duties back. I personally don't see it, but maybe it'll happen. One of the underrated things with Dan is how he handles these things as a leader. There's no leaks coming out of the Lions facility that Dan's going to be calling plays. There's no formal announcement. There's no circus stuff going around. When they bring back players to sign, like Aiden Hutchinson, there's no ridiculous nonsense with the owner insulting the player and the press. They do things behind the scenes, and there are not leaks with this organization. And that all points to high-level leadership. You can kind of stack these things up to the intangibles. But even when he talked about taking play call duties away, he kept on saying John Morton is important to this offense. Dan said he took feedback from every offensive coach through the game on what they had going on the field. A collaborative effort. And I think this is a baller move from Dan. I think this is one of the reasons why Dan Campbell is one of the elite top-tier coaches in the NFL. One of the things he did so well was get the ball to sometimes the much maligned Jameson Williams. Jamo had a big game, man. Some things fundamentally changed in his usage, though, and this is the interesting stuff to see when you're looking at tweaks to the play calling. I love these charts here from Next Gen Stats. You can see the number of drag routes, crossing routes that Jamo is running in this game. If you pull up the Next Gen Stats chart for Jamo from other weeks, you're going to see tons of streaks down the field. All of these white routes are completions. And you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 that are just dragging across the middle of the field. And that puts a tremendous amount of pressure on a defense. That's when you can get linebackers covering somebody that runs a sub 4.3, even though Jamo, I don't believe he ever actually ran. But, the film shows you that that's what he runs. It creates big mismatches, a lot of pressure on the defense, and especially in the underneath space when we see a lot of teams playing these two high safeties, it's that middle of the field that's going to open up. And putting a dynamic athlete like Jameson Williams in those spots going across the field is very difficult for defenses to handle. It's one of the first things they did. They started putting pressure on them by utilizing Jamo differently. You can tell by this chart that his average depth of target was way different in this game. His ADOT in this past season has been about 17 yards. And as we know, when you're throwing the ball that far downfield, you are going to catch a lower percentage of those passes. His ADOT for this game was 10, and you saw a huge increase in production. They were just running that same crossing route over and over again. And really, like I mentioned before, Goff said it's a cheat code. It's so difficult for defenses to handle. And I love that they just kept going back to it because it wasn't being stopped. As far as the running game goes, not a 50-50 split, as we mentioned before. I do think this is still going to be Gibbs's backfield. I do think there's an important role for Montgomery, but they know that Gibbs is their game breaker. You'll hear Campbell talk over and over again about one of the key elements to the offense is having these explosive plays. And Gibbs is easily one of the most explosive players in the league. We had a Khalif Raymond sighting. Where was he at? Was he at 4 catches on 4 targets? It's just so interesting to see the difference in usage with these guys. 4 receptions, 4 targets, 49 yards, using them in space, hard to handle. Then we have Laporta, my man, Sam Laporta. I tell you what, he took some heat last year with a dip in production, but he was banged up at the beginning of the year, and he got healthier and healthier as he went. One of the things that I've noticed about this guy and loved about this guy, especially the last few weeks, is he is catching passes, and it is not easy to bring him down. He had 5 catches, 53 yards on 5 targets, but the dude is a dog. He's hard to take down. And I'm not going to say it's like Gronkowski-esque, but Gronk had that after the catch thing going on, and also ran the seam more than Laporta does. Laporta stays closer to the line of scrimmage, but man, the guy's hard to take down. And one of the other things that I love to see, and it's kind of underrated, is the blocking that the Lions are doing downfield. It led to one of the Gibbs touchdowns where he was basically stacked up on the 3 or 4 yard line. And then next thing you know, it's Laporta, it's St. Brown, and it's Jameson Williams pushing him in to the end zone. It was awesome. And it can be some of those things that, like when we talk about intangibles, things that you don't see on the stat sheet, watching guys like that being downfield, blocking their tails off is such a big deal. It leads to touchdowns. Also, shout out to Sam Laporta's mustache, man. Good for you. Good for you, kid. Very clean game for the Lions. The box score I just read said 3 penalties. I don't remember the 3rd penalty. I know that 2 of the penalties came as a result of the Commanders absolutely melting down at one point. Who was the color announcer for the game? I can't remember off the top of my head, but former player. I believe he played for the Patriots, defensive side of the ball. And he was talking about the leaders on the defensive side lost their minds. Kinlaw, Payne, unsportsmanlike penalties gave way to the Lions having Jake Bates kick it out of bounds twice. The penalty for kicking the ball out of bounds is starting on the 40-yard line, but when you have a 15-yard penalty, that's going to push that back further. It pushes you back to the 25. Savvy move. I don't know if it's a weird rule that should be changed, but it's what they did, and it worked quite well. I think big picture, though, it's important to remember that this game is just a data point. Do you prefer data or data? I'm going with data right now. It's just a data point. It's one game against a beat-up team, right? Don't get too high or too low off of this. This is obviously good. It shows that the Lions still have it in the tank. It shows that they can still make the play calls that score points. 44 points is a lot of points, ladies and gentlemen. It's a lot of points. But it's just one data point. We will see next week against the Eagles. The Eagles preview is going to be coming up Saturday, again at 8 a.m. So get your coffee, have some coffee with your boy, and we'll break it down. On the defensive side of the ball, it's a little bit hard to judge something like this. And the reason I say that is Jaden Daniels, obviously, hopefully not perpetually banged up, but the guy's not been healthy this season. He was out again this week. Marcus Mariota under center. Scary Terry, the holdout warrior, has been injured and just is going to be injured, apparently. The man is week to week at best, it appears. I think he was already ruled out for next week on Monday. So they're still ruling him out very, very early in the week. Deebo Samuel, I don't think he looks right. I know he had a heel issue. You would have thought that almost every touch in this game would have flowed through someone like Deebo, but it didn't. Maybe there's something going on health-wise there. So it's difficult to evaluate when you're throwing the ball to Robbie Chosen Anderson. And maybe the only person older than Bobby Wagner and Zach Ertz. Obviously, the offense is not bringing to the table what they want to be bringing to the table from a health standpoint. But some people that did stick out on defense, Campbell called out specifically Branch, the not suspended for this game, Brian Branch. Branch, 7 total tackles, 4 solos, 1.5 sacks, 1 tackle for a loss. He took some heat from Aiden Hutchinson for what Aiden calls his overuse spin move when he is blitzing. But anyways, Branch was busting it up. He also called out Roy Lopez. Lopez, 5 tackles, half sack, 2 tackles for a loss. Love to see that. Terrion Arnold played well, but he did get banged up. We'll talk about him in a moment. Jake Bates, you don't want to see him on the defensive sheet, but he was out there throwing shoulders. The Lions need to tighten up some of those long returns, but overall they were stronger on special teams. But a few injuries from the game. Sewell missed a little bit, tweaked his knee, came back in. He's a savage. Lord knows what is actually going on with him. It wouldn't shock me if you find out like later in the year he's just like completely injured, but he's playing through it. Something to keep an eye on. Terrion Arnold picked up a concussion. Typically when guys are getting concussions this year, unless you're Jackson Dart, you usually miss a week, but we'll see. Old Jackson Dart did rack up another concussion, potentially leading to the firing of Brian Dable. Maybe Jackson Dart will stop wearing a diamond necklace while he's playing NFL football. Come on. I don't like it. But the Commanders are beat up. They're beat up. We did reference the fact that the Commanders' defense was melting down. Daron Payne punched Amon-Ra St. Brown. This is always one of those deals. Payne said that he didn't do that. He was just reacting to something. There might be some video out there. Who knows what Amon-Ra said to him? He probably said something nasty to him. And also, they were getting their teeth kicked in. That has to be frustrating. The Lions were stacking up long drives, dominant drives. They're getting pushed all over the field. And can someone please talk to NFL players about not spinning the ball on the ground after scoring a touchdown and dancing when you're down 19 points? It's a weird look. Kinlaw was talking crazy junk while they were getting spanked But they've got to be frustrated. A season like this is hard to watch. It's hard to play in, I'm assuming. Never done it. But it's definitely hard to watch as a fan when your team's really banged up. And as a result, they end up being overmatched. One thing that I do want to note, it's a concern for me when we talk about our young quarterbacks out here. You've heard me speak out a little bit about Jackson Dart. Now listen, Jackson Dart seems to be one heck of a talented guy. I used the wrong. Oh, there it goes. Jackson Dart seems to be one heck of a talented guy, especially from a fantasy standpoint. He's putting up points all over the place. But these kids have to slide. These kids have to slide. Something else that these kids need to do, they need to stop doing things like this. Producer Stu pointed this out to me, and I need to shout it out. Here's J.J. McCarthy from the Vikings. Here he is mean mugging. Apparently, he's been referring to himself as having an alter ego. That alter ego is known as 9. 9 makes this face. You want to know if you're talking to 9 or JJ McCarthy? If he's looking at you like somebody who's really hungry and sees a Big Mac. If he's looking at you like you just stole his girlfriend. Don't do it, because look at those eyes. Look at that war paint. He calls himself 9. He's violating a couple of principles here that we live and die by at Waiting Since 57. You don't give yourself a nickname. It's not a thing, especially when it kind of involves the third person. JJ, don't do it. One of my favorite tweets from the weekend was, what a day from 9. 20 of 42, 248 yards, a touchdown, 2 picks, a 54.5 passer rating. Win some games before you do that. It's my recommendation. But that's enough from our boy JJ. But listen, we are splitting up this show. This is going to be a wrap on Lions Commanders. It feels good to be back in the win column. It feels good to be in first place. But the next 4 weeks are very, very rough. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick for our boys. I know that we have the Eagles next week. At Eagles. Giants, which is not a pushover. They can do some tough things on defense. And that's in Detroit. Green Bay at home. Dallas at home. Rams away. There's some wild cards in there, ladies and gentlemen. I really think we need to win 2 of the next 4 games. That'll put us at 8-5. I would love to see 9-4. I would love to see 10-3. All right, but maybe we're wishing. But big picture, and this is going to be a mantra of the pod, a pod mantra. I want to make that playoffs, and I want to be hot and healthy, baby. Hot and healthy. 15 wins didn't get us for us last year. I want buys. All that stuff is great. But don't get too much caught up on whether or not they're going to win the NFC. Don't get too caught up on that. Let's be healthy. Let's be ticking. Let's be hot and healthy, baby. Anyhow, thank you all for listening. If you have yet to follow us on YouTube, smash that subscribe button. Please make sure to share this pod with people that love the Lions. Give us a follow on Spotify, all that stuff. Follow us on Instagram. Any sharing that you do is a huge help to the work that we're doing here at the pod. Appreciate you listening, and I'll be back Saturday at 8 a.m. previewing Lions Eagles. For producer Stu, and from Adam, hope you have a great day. Bye.
This feeling's deeper than an ocean, with a groove that's beating harder than my heart. So baby, now just hear me out. No, don't fear this emotion, 'cause you can't stop the fire once it starts.